Yeah, I remember what I wanted to ask you. With the writing, was there a time when you kind of had to hit a crossroads between writing and playing music ever?
I don't know. I sort of verge on that from time to time right now. As a lyricist, I really started totally by accident because I'd written literally 2 songs before I joined this band, just for fun. And when I joined Rush, it was actually my predecessor who had written most of the lyrics in the past, and Geddy and Alex were neither of them very interested in doing it. Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, I've been always interested in words and reading and so on. I'll give it a shot. Mm-hmm. And I did a couple of things that the guys liked, so it encouraged me to keep going, and it's become a thing now that I really enjoy and get a lot of fulfillment out of. And over the last few years that I've been doing that, I've developed a stronger and stronger interest in prose writing. You know, I've pushed myself as a lyricist, just as a drummer, to constantly explore new areas and try to use different constructions and to use different rhyming patterns and to use different rhythms and so on. And there's a lot really in common with being a lyricist and a drummer. I mean, you're dealing with mathematical rhythms and phrasing, and you can use the same freedoms of stretching bar lengths and all that kind of thing comes into play in writing lyrics. So it's a thing that I still enjoy doing very much, but I have found myself a bit constricted by verse, because lyrics by their nature, or any kind of versified poetry or anything, is very concentrated, and you have to take things and filter them down, and every word has to be very strong value. You know, the better I've got, the fewer words I use, you know, because those words become of greater value. And as I've seen that reflected in the best of the modern prose writers too, especially the North American, or specifically American writers of the 20s and the 30s. My favorite era of that is, I started with Theodore Dreiser, really, and Sherwood Anderson, and then grew into Scott Fitzgerald. Billy Faulkner and Hemingway is one of my very favorites, and John Steinbeck and John Dos Passos. And those writers of the between the wars period, basically. It's the golden age of literature. I think it's recognized by most people, or if it's not, it certainly is by me.
Should be.
Yeah. And to me, that's what I respond to, that I would really like to emulate someday as a prose writer. But I realize that as long as I'm in Rush, that's the first commitment, you know, and there's no way that I can split that kind of 100% commitment. So that I've basically tried to take a week or two every year that's devoted purely to being a writer, you know, and that's when I've done some of the articles for you people, and I've worked on short stories and sort of started theoretical novels and so on, just to see what I can do, just to see what I'd like to do, and to see what I do best, you know. So I've done enough now that I know that I would like to give it a stab, and if I could complete one good short story, I'd feel like a real writer. But when the day will come when I can divide that, really is the day that we decide that we're finished with Rush. You know, there's no way I can combine the two. Because to do any kind of a novel or any kind of even a series of short stories is a total 100% commitment of your life, you know. And I don't want to compromise what I'm doing as a musician by any means, obviously. But at a certain point as a musician, you reach the law of diminishing returns. And to me, improvement has always been obviously the measurement of how good I'm doing. You know, and as long as at the end of every tour I can say, okay, we played so many shows, and through all those shows I can see that I learned this and this and this specific rhythmic idea, and I've improved this much, and we do an album, and that's like final exams, you know, when you make a record and it defines you at your absolute best, you know, with everything that the studio can do and everything that you can do technically in the studio. It can represent you at a better than human perfection, you know. So to me, subsequent to an album, the next tour is me trying to live up to that set of standards, and every night I go on stage trying to play every song as good as it is on the record, basically. And that's just a totally involved commitment. Like I say, I can set aside a week every year where I'll go away by myself and just work on prose, but there's no way that I could sustain that on the road. You know, there's no way I could divide my attention or divide my...
typewriter on the bus.
Yeah, I mean, I do that from time to time for specific things, but when it comes to being a creative writer, I mean, the threads that you have to carry in your mind and the number of concepts that you have to try and put down on paper, and and the number of rewrites that it takes even to create a good short story. There's just no way that I can juxtapose that with all that it takes to be a serious musician and to try to measure yourself. But I've, getting back to what I said about 10 minutes ago, with the law of diminishing returns, I've got to the point now where my level of improvement has slowed down. You know, it was easy when we first got together. We weren't that good, and I wasn't that good, so it was easy for us to improve.
Right.
And we improved by leaps and bounds, and every album was a major step in terms of progressing as a band and progressing as individual musicians. And we've got to the point now where, you know, no false humility or false arrogance, but we have gotten pretty good as musicians, and we've gotten good at writing songs and interpreting them and taking a particular mood or a particular emotion that we want to express. And we have enough technique now and enough empathy and pathos that we can do it. So I find at the end of a tour now, where I used to have 5 or 6 brand new whole rhythmic areas that I would explore during that tour, now I might have 1 or 2, and I might learn 1 or 2 new things, you know, because of that law of diminishing returns. So it has become a little less fulfilling in terms of progression. You know, I'm still very satisfied when I walk off stage thinking that I've played well, and I'm still very unhappy and very frustrated when I walk off stage thinking that I haven't played well.
Right.
But at the same time, the progression isn't as fast now. You know, so consequently, it's the gratification isn't as immediate, and it isn't as constantly renewing. So I think there will become a time when I'm as good as I can ever be, and I will have to say, okay, I can live on this for a while.
Yeah.
Like a lot of musicians do. You know, they work themselves up to a certain level, and then they survive on that level for as long as they can. I don't think I would work that way because I have another goal, you know.
The writing?
Yeah, that's become another goal for me, and I can measure my improvement in writing as I used to be able to do with drumming 5 or 6 years ago, where every time I look at a story I did 6 years ago and I go, 6 months ago, and I'll look at something I did 6 months ago and go, well, I should have done this and I should have done that, and that sentence is very awkward and this paragraph is poor and I should have divided it here and I should have taken this out and I should have added something there. And I can see all those things, and that's exciting because then you can look at it and say, well, I know all that, now I can go on to the next step, you know, and I get all that buzz from writing now that drumming has always provided me with. So there's a bit of a conflict that right now, even though my commitment is still really 100% as a musician, but in the back of my mind there's a future goal that I really want someday just to write one good short story.
Short story, really?
Yeah,